Recording. Hello, hello, hello out there, YouTube. This is Angie.
Julie.
Julie.
Hey, Natalie.
Hi, welcome to episode 8 of our conscious conversations, usually around parenting. But you know what? If you're not a parent, you can still relate because you've been parented or you parent in some way, animals, parent anything, plants
We
even.
also parent ourselves.
We parent ourselves, yes,
Yes.
especially in an awakening process. You absolutely parent yourself, reparent yourself. And so for episode 8, we're going to be talking about parenting ideals. So before you get before you become a parent, okay, before you step into motherhood or the role of mother, right? Before you step into it, there's a lot of ideals that kind of get projected onto us by society, by other people, other moms, whatever it is. Like there are these ideals of what motherhood should look like. Because when we're stepping into motherhood the very first time, we don't know what we're walking into. We have these ideals of what it looks like. And so I wanted to get into a conversation today about what does it actually look like? What are the things that we stepped into? What did we think was going to happen versus what happened? And I think that'll bring a really interesting conversation like to the surface here and deep. We always go deep, right? We always end up deep. But anyway, if it's your first time here, I'm Angie. I am the creator of this YouTube channel, Journey to Soul. That's my business name. And I'm a mom. I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old, and a partner, my husband. And I just love bringing conscious conversation to everything I do. And so my business is all based around conscious conversation and bringing women together, because when we come together, we learn together, we rise together, we heal together, we rise together, and we activate each other, and we reflect the best parts of us too when we're all together. And so that's what I love about having these conversations. And so this is just, I bring it to everything I do. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about me, you can look at the details in here. Each of us have information in there. And I'll let Julie introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Julie. I am a mom of two boys, 11 and 12 years old. I absolutely adore these conscious conversations. And as you were speaking, Angie, not Natalie, Angie, um, and you were saying, bringing women together and having these conscious conversations, and it got me thinking. Um, I feel my first experiences having conscious conversations were actually with males and not females. Growing up, it started um, maybe in my teen years, and that's kind of where I found my groove of having these deeper conversations. I found I couldn't find that with the females who were around. And I actually had a friend I just reconnected with. We've been friends for almost 30 years now, and he just came to a party at my house, and I forgot how much I love our conversations because we often don't agree on things. And it just brings such dynamic conversation. But anyway, I also love having these conscious conversations with everybody, and I'm excited to be here for this one.
Yeah, thank you. Natalie.
Hey guys, my name is Natalie. So my family includes me, my husband, and our two kids. They're 11 and 8, and our two cats. Can't forget those guys. I just love having these conversations with everyone, with Angie and Julie and everyone watching. Um, it really, it really inspires me, and there's always hidden message. Like there's always a message for me within it, and for everyone watching. So I just love how all of us are all connected. And that's what my life is about. Really, is just reaching for that deeper awareness, and which increases our connectedness because we're all one and the same, right?
I love that. I love how you say that. It increases our connectedness. It does. That's very true. Amazing. So parenting ideals, I'll tell you when when this first came into my consciousness as a topic that I wanted to bring to our conversation, I was thinking about with me, like, I spent half my life not wanting children. I didn't want to bring children into this world because I grew up in trauma and chaos, and I didn't trust myself to bring anything other than trauma and chaos, to a child. So I didn't, my way of bringing love into this world was to not bring children into this world. This is one of my thinking. This is my thinking. And when I was 27, it changed. Something changed, and I got the download. My soul was like, okay, you're ready. Like, you're ready. And it was like, and I just followed the nudge. I'd always been following my nudges, and I just got this nudge, like, to leave a perfectly good relationship and leave it, and so that I could, well, not necessarily leave it, but tell him I wanted children now. And we had a perfectly good relationship that did not include a future with children or marriage, and so then suddenly I wanted it. And so now I followed this, like, I followed society's rules to, what would lead to happiness. I got married, I got a house, I got a job with benefits, got all the things that you're told you need to have when you're going to have a family. And then I chose to have a child. My husband and I, it was a conversation. It was an actual conscious choice to start a family. And that was so not what I ever pictured for myself. And so I was really excited. I was really excited. I was really happy that I was feeling empowered. I was going to make this choice. And so, again, like I said, I was following society's rules. And so society imprints on us all these ideals of what motherhood should be, or what motherhood should look like, or what, what I mean, what you should throw themed birthday parties, like, all these different things. Like, but then I came into it, and what ended up happening for me was the opposite of what I thought. And I suddenly was like, I can't keep my child safe. I can't, my trauma rose up, right? I had post-traumatic stress disorder in the end. But I, like, all of those ideals did not occur. It's not what happened. you know I was going to be breastfeeding, and it was going to be easy and super, what I mean, and it was not. It was 10 weeks of fighting for it, and so it was ugly. It was, there were moments, I like, it's embarrassing to even say, like, there are moments, like, I, didn't think I could make it without, like, doing something to my child, and it was scary. It was scary. And so I just wanted to start a conversation about what were those ideals that you might have had versus what had actually happened. It started to separate me and my husband too, because I didn't know what was going on with me, and he certainly didn't know what was going on with me.
So I've had a very different experience. I had wanted to be a parent from the time I was born, I think. I remember very young. And, I've never really thought before of what were my ideals, but I obviously had them. And I feel like I was so in tune at that time, because this was the time, this was what I had dreamed of being and wanted to be, that it was like nothing could take me out of my vortex of feeling amazing. So when Stephen was born, he ended up having to go to the NICU for 6 days. And that obviously wasn't an ideal. I do remember that I wanted him to, you know, be laid on my belly first. I was hoping to do the breast crawl with him so he could, like, crawl himself to nurse. But he wasn't breathing. And they had to bring him right away to the NICU, and I told Steve to go. But I was just so, I don't even know how to describe it, in like in my vortex, for lack of better terms, that all I did was just pray for the best and know he was in the best care and tell him he was in the best care. I focused on the positive instead of the negative. And there was 2 times I broke down in the hospital. But this definitely wasn't the ideal situation. I was expecting him to come to me and, we would stay at the hospital for a night or two and then go home. He was getting, stronger every day. I was able to nurse him. So I was able to go every 2 hours and nurse him. And then I was so excited after the 6 days, he was finally able to be released and he was going to be coming into what they call a care by parent room. So we would still be in the hospital because for a little while, and then we would be able to go home. But as soon as that happened, my blood pressure was found to be ridiculously high. So I had to be admitted into the hospital. And that was one time when I broke down because I didn't know what was going to happen with Steven. I was so excited to have him with me that I didn't know if this was now going to be taken away from me. Mm-hmm. So that I did break down at that time, and then he was able to come with me. So I was very grateful, and I had no concerns or worries anymore, even about my own health. I just knew I was in the best hands and I was going to take care of it. So it's interesting that all of these ideals, even though they were not happening, I still felt amazing through all of this. There was, like I said, 2 times I broke down. I needed to feel my feelings. One was when he had to be sedated to get scanned. And I was just terrified because he was nursing so well. And they said he might not wake up so well and nurse so well. And that was one of my huge ideals, that I wanted to be able to nurse as well. So I broke down then, and I broke down when I didn't know if he was coming with me. But other than that, I was able to really keep myself in a positive mind frame and pray. That's when I just started praying for everybody and everything. I was sending out healing, loving light to him and to everybody who was working on him and the whole hospital. I really got into my energetic routines of sending out love and light and healing. And yeah, so it's interesting. I didn't know, again, with this conversation, what I was going to talk about, but it brought up a whole bunch.
I actually love that you brought it to that specific, because it's sort of, I was looking at it in my experience as a general thing, but there was a lot of ideals I had too around the birth. And that's how you start motherhood, right? You start really when they're in you, but the birth was like nothing ideal happened in my birth. My husband got kicked out of the room. He got kicked out of the hospital because he got sick, so he wasn't there. And that was tough. It was tough. Yeah, nothing happened ideal. I was in 25 hours of labor. I had a midwife. I didn't want intervention. And I ended up with an epidural at 20 hours. It was, so many things that didn't happen. And I didn't have Kyle there, so I didn't feel as strong to advocate for myself. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like there were some lost opportunities.
It's funny when you said that, most mothers I know have a birth plan, right? And yes. That's your ideal
That's what I wrote
plan,
down. Yes.
Right? Your birth plan, but it never goes ideally exactly the way you plan it out to be. But I think, taking the hypnobirthing really helped me to realize that it wasn't necessarily going to go that way, but to remember that I am still empowered and to do my best to empower myself through these challenging times. I think that's what really, really helped me through all of the not so ideal situations that occurred. Because I didn't want any intervention either, and Steven had shoulder dystocia, so he was caught, and I was pushing for 4 hours, and they said if I didn't get him out soon, they were going to have to call, the emergency in. So I was able to get his head out, but then that was it. And then they had to call him in, call them all in, and it was just, a big rush of people, and they
Mm.
had to push him back in and turn him and pull him out. That
Oh man.
wasn't the ideal experience by any means. But definitely having some great hypnobirthing support prior to this helped me to stay in a positive mind frame through all the challenges and not so ideal situations. Support is so important. Like you said, not having that support of Kyle there, I can't imagine the challenge. We never know what we're going to go through.
It's true. And I'm grateful. My best friend was with me, and I'm grateful that
Yeah.
she was there. Yeah. She really
Everything
helped me.
does work the way it's supposed to be.
It does. It does.
Even
It's
if it
true.
doesn't feel ideal in the moment.
I'm curious, Natalie, what does this bring up for you when you think of in your own experience of ideals versus what actually
The
occurs?
reality of it, yeah.
Mhm.
So I was originally thinking, like typical parenting ideals, like the kind of the programming that we get from society and stuff. But then as you guys were talking, something was coming in that I feel I need to share. So sometimes it's not just the ideals of society. Sometimes it's just the beliefs that we hold within ourselves, right? So the ideal that I had for my first child when my daughter was born, I was so excited because this was going to be the first blood relative that I would meet.
Mhm.
Because I had at that point I hadn't met my birth siblings or any kind of like my birth family, and that was the ideal. That was like that's what I was really excited about, right? So I think I put all this unintentional pressure on our relationship that it had to look a certain way, that she was like that it was like all or nothing, right? Like that this was like my one, like the first real family at that point.
Yeah.
Um that I met, and that put like a tremendous amount of pressure on me.
Yeah.
Emotionally, right? Of like I have to love her just like so much because she's like the only blood relative I have. Like just so much pressure I was putting on myself that I didn't even actually realize until years after the fact.
Yeah. That's a lot. Like, and
Right?
I think about that's layered with so much pressure, so many other
Yeah.
little expectations and ideals within that label,
Yeah.
right? That's really
Yeah. So
interesting.
sometimes it's not, sometimes we always think it's, oh, it's society labels. We always love to like put it on society and stuff, but it's like, well, can you dig deeper in this moment? Like, what was another ideal that you held really close to your heart that maybe you didn't even admit to yourself yet, right? Because this is a safe space. This is also another reason for these conscious conversations is to give everybody that safe space, because that's how we learn about ourselves, and that's how we expand, right?
I had the ideal that, like, when you asked that question, that I had the ideal, if I dig deep, right? I had the idea that I would be nothing but loving. I would be nothing but loving. But there were times where I did not feel loving. And immediately, because I had that ideal, I immediately went to I'm a failure the moment I wasn't feeling loving. It's been a big learning and lesson in my journey of embracing the polarity of us, right? Like embracing dark and light, right? And we are both. We are not, we're the whole range. We are, I mean, technically we are all that is.
You're reminding me that I really feel from the time I got home with Steven, like my pregnancy, and from the time I got home with Steven, everything was really, really ideal. Like it just worked out the way I wanted it to. There was like I feel like there was no room for anything else. I wouldn't even entertain it in my mind, even if anything happened. I don't know. It felt like a beautiful, beautiful dream. And then I became pregnant with Grayson intentionally. I wanted to have two close together. And I was so sick with morning sickness for about 4 months. And it was morning, noon, and night. I think I lost 15 pounds over those 4 months while I was pregnant because I couldn't keep anything down. Um, so it was challenging, taking care of Steven. That definitely wasn't ideal, taking care of Steven. I had my mom living with us at the time, which was helpful in some ways and challenging in other ways. And then when Grayson was born, Steven was such an easy baby. And I always say, breastfeeding, if I breastfed him, someone could chop his arm off and he'd be fine with it. Like, no matter what happened, if I put him to the breast, he was good. He was happy. Well, Grayson was a completely different baby. So he would get upset and it would be very quick. And if he wasn't nursing or I couldn't figure out what he wanted, he would go stiff as a board and he would push me away. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, this was my magic cure all. I thought it was going to be very similar, but it definitely was not. He was a completely different child to experience. So the ideal experience I had up until that point was now all changing, both with the pregnancy and with bringing him into the family. His new dynamic, learning how to manage my time between both. It was definitely a lot more challenging bringing the second child in and figuring out how to do things. It definitely didn't feel ideal. And it was all the way it was supposed to be, and it created conflict, in my marriage as well. It was definitely a lot more challenging, a lot of learning experiences, and then starting to feel guilt on myself, like, why is this not working the same? Why is it not so wonderful as it was before? Am I a bad parent? We get all of these thoughts in our heads, and questions, but I think we all do the best we can with what we have at the time. So we learn, we live, and we learn. And it did get better and it did get easier as time went on. But it definitely was a big shock to me from child number one to child number two.
Yeah, that's a great point of the ideals that we bring from our first child or second child to the other ones, right? Like baby number one to baby number two to number three. We're human beings. We still have thoughts, even if you should believe them. I mean, we still have them, right? And they become ideals. They become beliefs of, baby one number one was, it was easy. It went smoothly. And then, baby number two or pregnancy number two, not so much, right? Like complete opposite. Yeah. And especially when you have that dynamic, I love how you brought up how the family dynamic changes from not even just necessarily bringing one child in. When you bring that second and the third one, like it changes, right? And sometimes there is that that strain on that marriage, on that relationship, and that's stuff that like nobody talks about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's true. And
yeah.
I think people, you don't realize you bring these ideals into that second baby. It unconsciously happens. It's like you've unconsciously prepared a certain way based on your experience, because that's how we operate, right? We operate based on the filter of our experiences, right? And so you unconsciously prepare for that experience, and then you have a completely different experience. And it can be really isolating, and that's what I wanted to bring this to too, was to talk about. It can be really isolating because if you have a lot of negative self-talk, do you know what I mean? If you're hard on yourself and you beat yourself up, then when this happens, there's a really big, inconsistency here, right? Like a big gap. And in that gap, you can really get lost in it and isolate yourself from your partner even, right? Because it puts a big strain in there in that partnership. And it can feel really lonely. And it can feel really, and so then maybe you had this ideal that you have a lot, maybe you're surrounded by a lot of people. I was surrounded by a lot of people, but I felt so alone because I had this ideal that they would help me, right? But I didn't know how to reach out because I was beating myself up. And so I was embarrassed. I was, you know what I mean? I was so happy for my first child and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to tell people I was struggling and that I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah, because it seems so real, right? And I find, especially when you're new to motherhood, whether if it's your first or your third or your sixth, it's intense because again, we're physical beings, and as women, we have hormones that, especially around birth and after birth, are just like skyrocketing, and then they're plummeting back down, and you don't know what the fuck is going on. And then you have to take care of this little human,
Yes.
right? And then you have all these thoughts, all these ideals, whether they're from society or from your own experience, and it's really difficult to get a hold of those thoughts if you don't know how, right? If you've never experienced conscious awareness, it's really hard to do that when like things look really shitty, right?
Even when we have experienced it, it can be very challenging
Yeah.
at times to get a hold of it, right? So definitely.
Yeah. And I just wrote down like we re-experience this pattern too, even as our children grow into new stages of development. Do you know what I mean? We have these, like, we re-experience this pattern of having ideals and then, you know what I mean, being sort of shocked out of them a little. It's like, and we keep on going. It keeps going. It keeps going. And then can we look at it? I guess an invitation here is, can we look at it as an invitation? It's an opportunity, an invitation for growth, an invitation to be gentle with ourselves. Right? And because we're going to keep experiencing it.
I love that reminder. I definitely needed that reminder right now because I have, as I mentioned to you guys, I think before we were recording, have been having some challenges, and I keep thinking, okay, I know what I need to do, but I'm not doing it. So I'm being faced with the opportunity over and over again to choose what I know is best. And I'm not necessarily choosing that.
And that's okay.
Because I think it'll be easier in the moment, and in the long run, it's not necessarily easier. So, like I said, even when we've, been conscious for a long time and, know all these things, it's not necessarily always easy.
Yeah. But also just to kind of play devil's advocate with you, Julie. I mean, just being aware of that, because I think there was an experience I had yesterday where I felt like being a little bit bitchy and sarcastic, and I was aware that I was doing it, and I'm like, well, I'm aware of I'm responding in this way. I know it's ego. I want to do this, so I'm just going to ride with it. But I was aware of it. So that in itself changes everything, because it doesn't have to be all rainbows and puppies and sunshine and, frolicking through meadows. You can be a complete bitch if you're aware of it. If you're aware that you're like, like this human body is feeling irritated and let's just go with it. Like let's be present with this feeling.
Let's go with this experience. Let's all right, let's do this experience.
Absolutely. There is no right and wrong, but being conscious of it does make a huge difference.
Yeah, and being conscious is knowing it'll come back again. It'll come back again, and you can choose differently then.
Exactly. It's staying within our power even when we're having those experiences. It's not all love and light. Like I love Simone and Eldora, love, light, and F you.
And F you, right? Yes.
And for me, it's like love, light, and healthy boundaries and limitations. But being conscious of it does absolutely change it. And as you said, Angie, we're aware it's going to come back up. We're going to have a chance to choose again. Right now we're choosing this, and maybe we won't next time. Maybe we will choose it again next time. There's no judgment. There's no right and wrong.
No. And maybe there's a beautiful gift in it. having the experience, you know, there could be a gift in it. That's why it's not wrong. No experience is wrong.
Right. So, and that right there, you know, ideals. What is an ideal if there is no right and wrong?
Yeah.
The ideals are an illusion.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just
The
the
ideals
concept
aren't
of them, right?
real. Yes.
It's funny, and as you're saying, these experiences will come back and back. Again, it is with my second child that I'm having experiences.
Of course. That's so funny.
Getting to choose again.
And you know what, guys? Ideals, another word for ideals is expectations.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that you say that because those expectations
Will
will,
kill you.
yes, challenge us all the time. Like, yeah.
And it's hard as humans to not have expectations. We have expectations based on experiences, based on programming, based on, you know, just what we believe, what we, you know, what we decide.
Right. But being conscious of those expectations and then being able to choose in that moment that it's
Yes.
okay that things are not turning out to our expectations. And we have a choice in this moment to choose something different, to make a different choice, or continue holding on to this expectation or change that, relabel something like we were talking about in the last video, you know, with
Yeah.
Mama Bear. And we can change it at any moment. But I think we're always going to have expectations of what happens. And I'm
Yes.
thinking now too, like these expectations can cause such anxiety in us as well. Can we let go of these expectations and ideals?
Yeah. You know, I think we'll end with a question. I have a question for each of us. When things don't go, when we realize that we've had an expectation, because often we don't realize we've had it until it's not going the way we want it to, right? And so when things are not going the way we want it to, what's your favorite tool? What's your best tool to help you through that experience?
So for me, as I'd mentioned already, one of the things is going to energy work and programming my brain, reprogramming my brain um, for what I want to bring in and what I want to focus on. So, like back to the hospital experience. Um, you know, he was in the NICU, he wasn't breathing. He had an APGAR, if you know what an APGAR is. They test all babies when they were born, of 2 out of 10 when he was born, and they had to do it 3 times. And he had the breathing tube. But anyway, so yeah, definitely doing energy work. So filling myself with light and love and healing energy, and then sending that out from my heart to my loved ones. So I would surround Stephen, and I would surround Steve, and I would surround all the doctors and nurses, anyone who was doing tests, um, that they were handling him with love, and they were handling him as if it was their own child, their own loved one. And I believed and I knew. And I would send them love and prayers and just talk in my head, he's in the best care. And, you know, that's my biggest tool that I use when things are not going to expectation. And I think I mentioned it in another video as well with my partner, you know,
Yes.
stepping away and again, filling myself with love and light, sending that to him, and just reprogramming.
Yeah. Natalie, what about you?
Yeah, so the first answer that came to my head was scrub it out. That's
Scrub
my
it,
thing. Just
scrub it.
scrub it out. Like when I feel that, because whenever you have an expectation and it's not going your way, you feel tense, right?
Yes.
Like you either have to defend yourself or you got to fight for, you know, fight for what you believe in or whatever. You got to fight someone, right? Or defend yourself. And whenever I catch myself, because then I'll feel my body tense up, right?
Mhm.
Which is my first sign of chill out and just scrub it out, because there's such a powerful tool to just erase it. You can erase anything. Be careful with this. but you can't erase anything, and especially if you believe it. Like if you know that it works, just
Yes.
scrub out that emotion, right? And then sometimes I gotta go revisit it again. I'm like, okay, I'm scrubbing it out, and then like the little being that was behind that scrubbing it out keeps poking you maybe like a minute later, so you're like, I'm scrubbing it out again. And then another big thing that I do is journal about it. And I'll ask, like the other day, my husband and I were going through some things, and I just asked, I was writing, and I asked, I'm like, okay, like let's explore this resistance that I have with my husband. You know what? Ooh, I was getting answers left, right, and center, like within like 24 hours, like things would pop up, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh,
I asked for this, so I guess this is the answer, right? And yeah, so those are my big tools, like knowing that you can scrub anything out, you can delete
I love
anything,
that.
you can reprogram anything in that moment. And then it's always good to again ask your guides, ask God, whatever words you want to use, whoever you want to ask. Maybe it's just yourself, right? Maybe you're
Yeah.
just writing to yourself in your journal, and ask yourself, you know, be ready for the answer and be ready to explore the answer. Just be open to it, right? Be
Yeah.
open to how the answer comes to you.
That
Because
was some
there's a lot of growth in there. There's a lot of available spaciousness in that
yes.
practice.
Exactly. And these things are opportunities. These, like when we come up against these walls, right, of our expectations and our ideals, they're big opportunities. And that's what I wrote down too is I do ask for guidance. So my biggest tool, especially right now, and I've been using it a lot when things aren't going the way I want them to go, right? I resort to energy work as well. And with energy work, I lately what I've been doing is taking 3 deep breaths, and when I breathe in, I connect down to the earth, and then I allow that energy to come up through my body as I exhale and up and out of my, out of my crown. And I take 3 deep breaths that way, going up and down through me, right? Through me, through me, through me. And then I feel connected. And then I ask for guidance. I ask my guides and I say, okay, I am open to what's happening here. I'm open to what's happening here and understanding what's happening. I'm open to that. And I'm going to put the intention that whatever happens will be for the highest good of all. I'm going to align my attention with source, intention, which is always for the highest good. So I will align myself with that intention. And that's what I do. And that helps me in the moment to be okay with that tension you're talking about, to be okay in the tension. That's what helps me. So that's been a tool that I've been using a lot lately, and it's been helping me so much because a lot's going on in my world right now.
Uh, these
So
are these are really great tools, and it's really powerful to witness other people using them, right? Because
yes,
this is the new way to live our life. This is the new way to move
yes.
through this experience, is like, let it be normal that everybody just stops in the middle of the street, looks up to the sky, and be like, all right guys, what the fuck? What
Exactly.
next?
Fucking
Like, what
help me
can I
out
do in
here.
this moment?
Yeah,
Right?
help
But
me out.
this is how we're, like, again, that conflict management that I think maybe we were discussing in the last episode, Julie, but I mean, this is what it looks like now, right? Asking within, being like, okay,
Absolutely.
what is this trying to teach me?
I
Yes.
love that you brought up the writing too. It's so tangible, and I've definitely used that many times in the past too, and I
Me
love
too.
the way it comes out. Um, these questions we have, and we answer them through our writing. Like, it is absolutely amazing what can come out if we put that pen to paper and allow it to flow. We get
Yeah.
so many answers. So
Yeah.
yeah, all these things
Yeah.
are amazing.
Thank
Amazing
you.
tools.
Thank you for sharing. I think that was a beautiful way to end with some tools, like, because the truth is, we're
Yeah.
going to keep running into this. We're always going to run into these ideals and what actually happens totally being different. And the Natalie, I love the way you said it. We're moving through an experience. So the tools are just to help you move through the experience in the now moment. You don't have to do
Ah,
anything later. You just need to move through. energy is always moving. It's moving.
Totally.
Ah, what a
Yeah.
great
Oh,
conversation.
that was amazing. Thank you guys. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yes.
These conversations are so amazing and so empowering. I always feel like I am super in my vortex right now with everyone.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah. So yeah, make sure to hit subscribe, guys. Like this video, hit subscribe, hit the little bell. We're live every Tuesday. And we love having you guys with us. It adds to the energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fun for us to listen to our conversation back. Like we're on live every Tuesday evening, right at 8 o'clock Eastern time. We're on live to chat with you. At least one of us will be on live, and it's fun for us to revisit the conversation.
I love listening to them back because
Yeah.
I always get more each time having the conversation and then listening to the conversation. There's always more information that I take in that helps me. Especially if I'm having a challenging time, I'm like, oh yeah, these tools. We have so many tools. Sometimes we forget what they are and and when to use them. So it's great reminders. So yes, absolutely give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and if you want to work with us or find us, look in below and you will see all of our links.
Yes. Yeah, you can connect with us in many places. All right. Love you guys. Oh, I love this conversation. Thank you.
Fire
Have a good night.
fingers.
Bye.
Fire
Bye,
fingers. Amazing.